RazMaTaz, written by Stephen Cosgrove, illustrated by Robin James. Open up to the first page. Beyond tomorrow, just this side of today, stands a magnificent range of mountains called the highest of the high. The mountains are so high that dawn and dusk seem to collide as the wind sweeps the clouds way up to the sky. Below the peaks of the highest of high are the misty mountain meadows where the alpine flowers bend and sigh. In these lush green meadows of the highest of high live many wondrous creatures. There are eagles who catch each dip in the wind and seem to soar forever without flapping a wing. There are boulder bunnies who hop about, twitching their noses in the air. And most wondrous of all, there are the goats of the highest of the high. These goats are short and fat, with long gray and white fur that ruffles in the wind. They don't do much. Rather, they're content to gaze about the meadows, munching on a bite of grass, or occasionally sniffing a flower or two. Turn the page. All of the goats, that is, except one very special goat named RazMaTaz. Raz would spend all day racing about the meadows. He would bounce from rock to rock. Then he would run from one end of the meadow to the other, just to see if the other goats would notice him. But the other goats would only look up as he zipped by, and then continue their gentle munching of the green grass. Oh, pooh, those old fuddy-duddies wouldn't notice their own reflection in the water, Raz said as he raced off to the end of the meadow. Turn the page. One day, as he was running about, he noticed the other goats watching the eagles soar on the wind. "Aha," he said, "maybe if I flew like an eagle, they would notice me." So he climbed atop a large boulder, jumped high into the air, and madly flapped his legs. Well, he stayed in the air for only a moment, and like a bag full of bricks, he fell to the ground with a thud. The other goats looked up for a moment and then went back to their grazing. Raz thought as he struggled to his feet. Maybe being an eagle isn't all it's cut out to be. And he wandered about the meadow thinking of something else that would make the other goats notice him. Turn the page. Maybe if I just bumped one of them, he'd notice me, he thought. So he bounced around on his legs once or twice, reared high on his hind legs, and rammed an old goat with his head. The old goat stood there looking at RazMaTaz in total amazement. Then with a whoof, he turned and he butted Raz right on the rump, sending him flying. The other goats looked up, smiled their little goat smiles, and continued contentedly grazing. Turn the page. Raz again picked himself up and hobbled about, his feelings more hurt than anything. "Oh, golly," he sobbed. "The only thing I want is to be noticed. Instead, I just get pushed around." With a large tear trickling from his eye, he started to walk away from the meadow. But he hadn't gone very far when he heard someone giggling. Raz turned quickly around toward the sound, but nothing was there except a large rock. Thinking he was only imagining it, he started to leave. Again, he heard the laughter, and spinning quickly around, he saw a whole group of boulder bunnies rolling around and laughing. "What's so funny?" he asked gruffly. "You look so silly when you got butted. That's why we just had to laugh," said the rabbits. And with that, they burst into gales of laughter. Turn the page. "I'll show you what's silly about being butted," he said. And he slowly backed up, and he lowered his head, and he charged those bunnies, who scampered nimbly out of the way. He looked around, saw more bunnies, and he charged those bunnies. As before, the boulder bunnies easily hopped out of the way. "Why, you long-eared balls of fur," Raz shouted as he charged at a bunch of bunnies standing right in front of a rock. Fortunately, the bunnies got out of the way, but unfortunately, Raz, who had his head down to charge, he couldn't see where he was going. He ran straight into the rock. With his eyes all dazed and twisted, he sat down with a thump. The rabbit skipped away, chanting, silly goat, na-na-na-na-na-na. Turn the page. For a while, poor RazMaTaz just sat there, feeling very sorry for himself. Oh, those stupid goats, those stupid bunnies, I'll show them all. I'll just run away. With a choked-back sob, he ran into the foothills of the mountains of the highest of the high. Tears filled his eyes as he scampered along the narrow trail that led up the mountain higher and higher. Turn the page. He was so mad because no one had paid attention to him that he didn't pay attention to the angry, dark clouds that were gathering in the skies. Over the rocks and under the rocks, Raz climbed higher and higher and higher. He would have kept climbing to the very top had it not been for a bright bolt of lightning and a loud clap of thunder. It happened so quickly that he jumped off the edge of the path and landed right on top of a craggy boulder. He grabbed onto the rock as the thunder and the lightning crashed around him. Turn the page. Poor Raz looked about and realized now there was no way to get down. The sky was snapping with lightning, and far below he could see the other goats grazing in the meadow. Oh boy, he said through chattering teeth, they never paid attention to me before, but I really wish they would pay attention to me now. He took a really deep breath and shouted, help, help. The other goats looked up and smiled their little goat smiles and went right on munching their green grass. Oh no, I've teased them so much before. They won't notice me now when I need help. And he began to cry soft little tears. Turn the page. He might have been hanging on that rock until this very day if the boulder bunnies hadn't realized something was wrong. You know, said one of the bunnies, I think he really is in trouble. They all looked up, and because the bunnies were looking up, the goats looked up, and they all saw poor RazMaTaz high on the peak of the mountains of the highest of the high. That little goat is in trouble. We've got to help, said the bunnies. They began hopping into the foothills, with the goats right behind them. They scampered up the mountain until they were on a ledge of rock right above RazMaTaz. How are we going to get him off the rock? Asked one of the rabbits. The goats thought for a bit, and just as another lightning bolt flashed, they came up with an idea. They told it to the bunnies, and since there was no other plan, they all agreed. Turn the page. One of the goats gently picked up one of the bunnies by the tail and slowly hung him over the edge. The next bunny climbed onto that goat's back, climbed over his head, and down the first bunny. Very carefully, he grabbed his ears, and then he hung down even farther over the edge. One by one, all the bunnies hung down on the bunny chain until the final bunny was right in front of RazMaTaz. He was so shocked at seeing a bunny hanging there in midair, he didn't know what to do. Put your arms around my waist, said the bunny. We'll pull you up to safety. And he did as he was told, and then with all the goats pulling and tugging, they lifted him right up to safety. With Raz safely in the lead, all the bunnies and all the goats walked slowly down the trail from the highest of the highs. Turn the page. From that day forward, RazMaTaz contentedly grazed in the misty meadows of the mountains of the highest of the high. And whenever he felt that nobody was paying attention to him, he would lower his head, stomp his feet, and then just gently bump a boulder. Turn to the last page. You see, if you're showing off and nobody pays attention, Just remember RazMaTaz and his scary revelation. Don't get in trouble.